Welcome to the Monday, January 11th Education Committee and Supplementary Regular Board Meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, I would like to, we need to appoint a Secretary Pro Temp. Is there a nomination?
I nominate Megan Schaefer.
Is there a second? Megan Schaefer has now been nominated for our Secretary Pro Temp for this meeting only. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, Ms. Schaefer.
Thank you.
Welcome to the other side of the table. I'll turn the meeting over. Oh, I'm sorry, audience recognition for agenda items only. If you would come forward and sign in with Ms. Schaefer if you have anything to share with the board in public. All right, seeing none, I will now move to Mr. Copeland.
Thank you, Dr. Van Lynch, and just let me indicate that we may be appointing Mrs. Schaefer again. We never know, you know. Let's see how well she does at this here. We have a presentation tonight, but before the presentation, I'd like to invite the public to join us as we celebrate the life and works of Dr. Martin Luther King at the district's annual MLK Afternoon of Service this Friday, January 15th, 2016, from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. in the Lower Merion High School cafeteria. Families, students, and community members are welcome. Service projects at the event include collections of books, toys, and children's clothing, snack packaging for the Ronald McDonald House, and creating Valentine's Day cards for nursing homes. The afternoon will also feature live performances and music, historical information about the civil rights movement, kid-friendly crafts, and other activities. If you're interested, there's complete information on the website, and I encourage folks to participate in that. Also, for this evening, in education land, we often use a lot of initials, acronyms, whatever it is. There's PVOS and all kinds of SATs and so forth and so on. One of the measures that we talk about is our growth measurement, the PVOS. And it's not an additional test. It's the way in which we use assessments to measure growth over a period of time. And what we'd like to do is take some time. This is a presentation that was given at the curriculum committee meeting. It's been refined based on some comments that came from board members who were there. But to enter into a brief conversation about what the growth measures, the PVOS, mean, the fact that it really is the kind of measure that you want to use to measure yourself against yourself, its strengths, and also its limitations. So with that, Brian Cody, our Interim Director of Secondary Education and Master of all things testing for Lower Merion. Mr. Cody.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Good to see everybody back. Let me start off by saying that we'll be looking at PVOS from the 2014-15 year, so their last year's results, which is why you see the date 2014-15 instead of 15-16. The Pennsylvania Value Added Assessment System can be located at the pvos.sas.com website. There is a public portal, and we'll be taking a look at the data sets as to what the public would see when they log in. So PVOS data supports a few things. It supports raising achievement, closing the achievement gaps, increasing graduation rates, and increasing college and career readiness, and is also being utilized as a portion of the educator's effectiveness evaluation. So when we look at PVOS, we're looking at two things. We're looking at achievement versus the amount of growth that a district or a school is particularly making. So both of these are complementary, but they are different types of academic measures, and I'd like to take you through two slides that show the difference between two. So for achievement, the focus is really about the result of the academic experience at that particular point in time on a given assessment. The measures, it measures student performance at that single point in time during a particular testing year, and often affected by factors outside of the school and highly correlated with the students' demographics, such as the socioeconomic status. Compares performance to a particular standard. We're not comparing performances to other students or performance that of the same child compared to the same test the following year. Critical to students' post-secondary opportunities for that particular achievement, such as an SAT or a PSSA or a Keystone, where some colleges and universities are actually looking at those performance exams as a criteria to get into a particular institution. On the other side of PVAS is that growth factor, which measures the student's academic growth over a period of time. So in the slides that you'll see, it's represented across multiple years as well as independent years. Typically, there's no correlation, and according to the PVAS sources, there's typically no correlation or relationship with the student's demographic when a student's prior achievement is adequately accounted for. And this is really comparing the student's performance to their own prior performance on any given assessment. So this is a concept of value added, and I wanted to sort of paint a picture for you to have an understanding of what value added means. So to understand the concept, imagine a child's physical growth curve. And every year a child would stand against the wall, and their parent would place a particular ruler at his or her head to measure the height at the ages of 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So from these data points, a parent can construct a graph to illustrate the height of the child, as you can see here, these points that construct a graph of the child's particular growth. And often parents discover that this growth curve doesn't resemble a smooth line seen as to a pediatrician's chart. Instead, there might be some dimples or blips within that particular achievement curve. So, for example, children may have growth spurts in some instances that we see. There are standards of error within those particular growths. So, for example, one year the student may not have stood up straight, or the parent didn't hold the ruler at the same level or with a pitch behind a student's head. So there are some growth factors that come into play as well. So now let's apply this same sort of process to education. And this particular graph shows an academic growth for the same group of students for each particular grade. In this case, we're taking an example of grades 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Although PVAS does not measure growth for second and third graders because there's not enough testing history, we're only using this as an example. So imagine that a school has been testing each student annually in math, and that the scores from these tests are used to construct each student's group math growth curve. So the curve for any group of students will likely exhibit a particular pattern of dimples or bubbles similar to the physical growth curve that you saw for the individual child. However, if by aggregating this particular data or information, many students we discover have a dimple effect occurring in fourth grade in this particular instance. So then we want to ask the question, what's happening through our standard design system at the fourth grade level? So some practical implications of value added. We know from the data that Lower Merion educators are better able to monitor the growth of all students, from low achieving students to higher achieving students, ensuring growth opportunities for all students across the district and across our schools. We utilize value added to make informed decisions about instruction, where we can focus on resources that help students and teachers both teach and learn. We modify and differentiate instruction to address the needs of all students, and we align professional development efforts in the areas of the greatest needs of those particular students and teachers. Using value added, Lower Merion can identify best practices and implement programs that best meet the needs of students across grade levels and across curriculum. So we're going to take a look at some web-based scatter plots. And just for a knowledge base, the scatter plot is broken down into 4 quadrants, but I'd like to focus first on this center line of 0. So in the PVAS term or world, 0 means a year's worth of adequate growth. So that's the expectation that every child will meet that 0 threshold line, which is the adequate growth in a particular grade level. So this upper right quadrant indicates students that are higher achieving and higher growth. We're above the achievement line of 50, and we're to the right of the growth line showing a positive growth. The upper left quadrant still indicates students of higher achievement, but in fact, now that we're to the left of the green line, that's showing lower growth for those higher achieving students. Either one of these particular areas is good. We always want to be in the optimum quadrant of the higher achievement, higher growth. The bottom left is a sign of lower achievement and lower growth, and the bottom right quadrant is lower achievement, higher growth. So let's take a look at some scatter plots. These two scatter plots represent our elementary schools across grades 4 to 5. The top graph indicates students' performance and growth in mathematics, and your bottom scatter plot indicates the same schools comparative in the English language arts. So what this tells us, and we'll take a look at a summary slide, is we see that Lower Merion schools that you can see indicated in red for the most part are all above the high achievement line. Others higher than others within our district. And what we can see is that Lower Merion is still at a high achievement level within the district in grades 4 to 5 math. Our bottom scatter plot indicates the English language arts. You can see that there are tighter knits of the scatter plots in English language arts, and we believe that to be true since the high rigor in this year's particular PA Core mathematics test. In comparison to our middle schools here, our top still represents across grade levels in mathematics. We see Bala-Cynwyd and Welsh Valley in a comparative schools of 11, with one school listed as School 1 as being an anomaly to the others. For the most part, Lower Merion schools, you can see, are higher achieving than 8 of the other schools indicated here, and are falling in the higher achievement, lower growth category in the math scatter plot. And in the bottom scatter plot, we could see that Lower Merion and Welsh Valley both are above high achievements as well as showing high growth. So we can see that both of those middle schools in our district are in the optimal quadrant of that scatter plot.
Brian, could you just go back to the elementary?
Sure.
I guess the math. This is an issue that came up in the discussion, and so if you see where Gladwin is on the left, okay? So one of the questions was, well, who are the people on the right and what did they do? So we got schools 1, school 2, school 3, school 4, school 5. I'm not sure who they are. I know that some of those schools are nearby comparable schools. We're not going to out them unless I find out they outed us, and then I will. So in the case of a number of those schools, I think all of them, while they're to the right, Gladwin scored an achievement level higher than they did, in some cases as much as 10 points. But they got there because of the growth index, which meant that there might have been years prior where the scores were significantly lower and they made a move. Am I right, Brian?
That's correct.
So as a result, it takes me back to, you have to be careful how you use this data and not make too many knee-jerk reactions to it. It's best used to measure you against you, and it begins to fall apart as a measure when you're looking at you against someone else. And that's the reason why we wanted to show that, to respond to the questions that were asked, to give you a sense as to what's there. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Copeland. Moving on to our high schools, we're only looking at a comparison here, not because Algebra 1 is not important. The relevancy behind showing biology and literature is that many districts offer the Algebra 1 at different levels. We offered it last year at our 8th grade level. Other schools offer it at a high school level. And for the scatter plot purposes, that would have started blending middle schools and high schools together and could have posed a confusing conversation. So we wanted to point out the Keystone Biology and the Keystone Literature at the high school level. In this instance, we can see that Lower Merion and Harriton High School, in terms of biology, high performing and high levels of growth, exceeding the neighboring schools and districts that are represented in this particular chart. As well as our literature, we can see that Harriton High School is in the optimal quadrant of higher achieving, higher growth. And we also see that Lower Merion High School is indicating a higher achievement, lower growth. What we can say about that is in terms of Lower Merion, when we looked at their particular achievement, there were a great number of students that fell in the proficient category. And their projections, based on past testing histories, were projected to score in advanced categories. That did not occur, although students were still performing at high levels of proficiency, some students coming in at lower level, mid-level advanced, where their projection could have been mid to high levels of advanced, so just not meeting their targeted or predicted performance scaled score.
Can I just ask a quick question then? So the higher you get on the achievement, on the proficiency advanced axis, the more likely you are going to be to move to the middle and eventually, I mean, sit on that zero line. So if you score 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, you're never going to show improvement because improvement's not possible. You're not going to show falling down. So the higher you get, the more likely you are to move to that center line. Is that correct?
Good question. So each year there's what they call an entering achievement status, and that's another scatter plot that you see. We're looking at the scatter plot that represents the percent proficient, percent advanced compared to the average growth index. The other scatter plot shows the entering achievement levels. So if those entering achievement levels from the previous year are lower and students score higher, that's what's going to actually move your dot to the right of the green line, correct?
Right, but if your achievement level is already high, it's a whole lot harder to move to the right on the chart.
That's correct. That's correct. So in all likelihood, you tend to sort of move back to that green line or slightly to the left of the
You're probably going to move back and forth between the two top quadrants, which, I don't want to, overstate the obvious, but this is again why you look at the information, you see what it tells you, and you make some decisions whether it's really telling you anything important or not.
So this slide represents earlier what Mr. Copeland was talking about. So in this instance, we're looking at Gladwin compared to School A and School B at the elementary level. We can see in the middle column next to the growth measure, there's an average growth index. You can see that Gladwin is showing a negative 0.136, where the other School A and B are in the positive direction. But if we move to the column all the way to the right under the total percentage, you can see that Gladwin has outperformed those particular schools in proficient levels and achievement. So an indication as to what Diane was saying, the higher that you're performing in most instances is very difficult to raise that growth level. So we see the same for Welsh Valley compared to a middle school, a comparative middle school. We see that there's higher achievement among Welsh Valley compared to School C in this chart, and as well as Lower Merion High School compared to School D.
Can I ask a clarifying question? And the growth measure, in order to be average, would be 1 year, correct? So what are the units of growth measure, like school A, and that has a 3.5? What does that mean in terms of years, or what exactly does that number mean?
3.5.
You mean in
Well,
terms of
school A.
like,
So school A there's a growth measure, there's an average growth index. What are those units, and how do they
So those are
correspond to years?
the growth measure is an NCE point scale, so it's normed, and those numbers actually indicate colors for teachers and administrators. So what we're seeing here with a number of 3.5 for that particular school, they're probably looking at a significant achievement in terms of meeting the academic growth that was calculated through PVOS for that particular school.
but it's not, sometimes we use like 3.5 as meaning, 3 years and a half month or something. That's not what this is.
Okay, so,
Nor is it 3.5 points on a test.
well, right, so now I know what it's not. At some point, how can I understand? So if I look at, Bala Cynwyd or Welsh Valley on one of these scatter plots, what am I to make of the bottom line?
So you would want to know what the multiplier or the factor, the mathematical factor they use to determine that.
I guess,
Okay.
what I'd like to understand is, a seventh or eighth grade student at Welsh Valley who spent 1 year in school, and by this measure, they didn't have 1 year of growth. Did they have 11 months of growth, 11 and a half, or 4?
I'm not sure.
I don't think PVOS is going to get that granular. When we think in terms of PVOS, it's always about moving a group of students that are coming into that particular grade level or that classroom.
Right, so the group, the answer for the group in terms of months as opposed to some random index would be, I guess, it would help me understand.
I can certainly look in to see if we can get a calculation for that. I don't think, I've never heard in terms of PVOS, how that would relate in terms of making a year and a half's worth of growth or 11 months worth of growth over time. So in summary, we have a few takeaways that we know and learned from PVOS as well as other academic measures. We do know that the Lower Merion School District students are still demonstrating high levels of academic achievement across grade levels and across content areas. We did recognize that there was a new PA core math that was significantly more rigorous than previous years, and that the high school biology indicated higher achievement and higher growth within both of our high schools. What the district's doing with this data is that we're continuously working to show growth in all performance levels. We're looking to advance students and grow students at the below basic performance level, the basic performance level, proficient, and advanced levels. In Pennsylvania, we're in the second year of the PA core standards, and like I had said, that Lower Merion teachers and administration continues to align curriculum with new standards. As we look at scopes and sequences, we continue to align common assessments, and we help students and support students in rigorous course placements based on projections that PVOS gives us. We are looking at the middle school science data. We have indications that in 4th grade and 8th grade, being so separated, we want to take a look specifically at the 8th grade level. Although we recognized from the 8th grade to the high school in terms of biology, there's great achievements going on within that sequence. So we want to take a closer look at middle school science and the content areas or the sequence in which we are delivering instruction. PVOS is also used along with other assessment data to take a look at achievement and growth so that we can design both enrichment and remediation when needed.
Before you go on to the last section, so if we go back one to the biology scatter plot, if we take my previous question, which is the higher achieving you are, the more likely you are to move towards that middle. I mean, this plot shows tremendous change in the results of our Harrington and Lower Merion students, which means that the previous years were low.
Correct.
And so my question is, what changed? Is it just kids are doing better on the test? Are we teaching to the test? Are we changing the curriculum? Are we changing the order of the curriculum? What changed between when the scores were really low and now they're high?
Great question. So in terms of PVOS will utilize testing history. So for the biology in ninth grade, when students take the biology keystone, they will look back at the students' fourth grade science history and the eighth grade science history. So we recognized earlier that the achievement in the eighth grade science was lower, which would then indicate a lower level of growth expected. So that performance level initially was low, which goes back to what we were saying. Maybe to lower the performance, and then we show higher gains in the keystone is a reason why we're so far to the right on the growth, because we've really exceeded the growth measure based on the projection from 2 years of prior testing history in fourth grade and eighth grade in science. Oh, sorry about that. That's my family. Let me get to my last slide. Unless you have questions about my family, I don't know. They're great people. The changes in our program that resulted from the analysis of PVOS and other assessment results, we've made curricular adjustments in writing. As you recall, a year ago, 2 years ago, when there was talks about writing under the old PSSA, we've taken a stance in Lower Merion at the elementary and the middle school level to really embed professional development for our teachers and look at the curriculum and align our domains of writing for clearer focus and conventions. So a lot of this data helped us be strategic in how we plan our professional developments. We're looking to provide after-school supports for students. We're providing a summer bridge program, and this year we're starting the middle school Algebra 1 bridge program this February based on board approval last year. So these are the things that we're looking to augment and start these on-ramps for students based on their particular projections and their achievements to increase growth for our students across all assessments and content areas. At this point, I'm happy to entertain further questions and answer questions about my family.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you for providing us with another analysis of this PVOS data. So I'd open it up to questions at this time. Okay, please, Ms. Robinson.
Thank you for the presentation. I just was wondering how the PVOS data reflects students that are moving into our area as we have all this enrollment growth.
So great question. As long as we have 3 years of testing data from any student who has tested within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, so students that are coming from neighboring districts or anywhere from within the state of Pennsylvania, if they have 3 years of testing, whether they're coming from an affluent school district, whether they're coming from a struggling school district, as long as they have 3 years of adequate testing, they would be included within those projections. for PVOS growth that particular year. So even though it's their first year here in the Lower Merion School District and they've had 2 other prior years of testing in another district, they would be included in this analysis.
And just as a follow-up, then the people that are moving in from out of state, how are they reflected in here, or are they not reflected?
They are not reflected in here, so they would need to have 3 years of consistent data within Pennsylvania to be calculated. You're welcome.
Additional questions? Brian, could you speak a little bit more about how the data is actually used at the building level on both the elementary and secondary levels? You told us a bit about that, but I'm interested in terms of particularly students who might be in achievement teams, how that PVOS data is used to support their development and growth as, again, one snapshot in time around their data.
Why don't we, before we ask Brian, since this is Dr. Everslot's first
Please,
meeting, why don't
yes.
we get him to do something?
No pressure, Dr. Everslot.
Pleased to contribute, thank you. So I think it's important to note that rarely is this data used in isolation. So this is one data point that's brought to the conversation when a student is brought to the achievement team. That used with looking at PSSA and Keystone data, into internal benchmarks, grades, other common assessments throughout that we're using as benchmarks, regardless of the grade level, to help create a data picture. So PVOS can help you when looking at it, ask questions, and some of those questions may be, why isn't the student demonstrating the growth that we had perhaps hoped or had been projected? And those questions are explored in achievement teams and data teams at the building level that can lead to a lot of different questions, including social emotional, counselor involvement. There could be a lot of questions raised. But this data used in isolation just by itself is really hard to provide much context. And there's a story behind each of those dots and a story behind each kid. And so when we bring students to the achievement team, it's really important that we bring the data to the student level.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Please.
In the very beginning of the presentation, it says it's being used as a portion of the educator effectiveness evaluation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'd really,
No, it's you.
no, I can talk about it. I think that, as I said at the curriculum committee meeting, try as I might to slam this, as I do for most stuff that I'm forced to do. I really think that there's some statistical elegance that's associated with this, and if used wisely, I think you can follow over time some trends and get some information that helps you strengthen your curriculum and look at yourself in a positive way. It has been used as part of the teacher effectiveness model. Meaning their evaluations, I think we're up to, is it 15%?
15%.
It's 15% of their evaluation. I disagree with that. Not as a political. I just don't believe that it holds enough structure that it should be used in the way that it's being used. And I'm hoping that under the new reauthorization that there's some leeway given to states so that they can back away from some of the misuse of data than that. So.
Thank you. Any additional, please, Dr. O'Leary?
And do we have the ability to look at different groups of students and their growth? So, can we separate this out by, students who are high achieving, how much growth they have, lower achievement gap, or what ability do we have to break up the PVOS scores by demographics?
So much like we do an analysis of achievement data based on socioeconomic status, ethnicity, gender, we can also break that analysis out within PVOS and look at those particular subgroups. In terms of looking at your highest achieving and the growth, there are two factors that we analyze both at a district level and a building level. There are two types of reports, and you heard Dr. Eveslag mention utilizing reports and asking questions. So with every report that we analyze, it always raises a new set of questions. So we can look at a quintile report that breaks students up into 5 groups, quintile 1 through 5, from lowest achieving to highest achieving. And then we can look at what's called a performance diagnostic report that looks at the performance levels and where students were projected to fall into a below basic, basic, proficient, or advanced. So we can see how much growth or how little growth students made within quintiles and performance diagnostics. We have that ability, and we do exercise those best practices in doing that at the building level and the district level among our achievement teams and content teams.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, and I also want to thank Dr. Eveslag for really putting into context how this tool can be used and should not be used in isolation. And I think one of the takeaway I had, or one of the questions I had, was in terms of the PVOS itself, it's exclusively based on and assumes the reliability of the underlying test, both the PSSAs and the Keystones, right?
Correct.
So it's only as reliable as those tests are.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Cody.
you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the presentation. I'd like to now move to audience recognition on the non-agenda items. If you're interested in speaking, please sign in with Ms. Schaefer. Get a 3-minute time limit. Hi, Karen.
We have one member on the list.
Okay,
I have to
great,
say, this is much less intimidating than the last time I spoke to you guys at Lower Marion High School.
great.
Good
Whenever
evening.
you're ready.
My name is Karen Dunlevy. I'm happy to say I voted for all of you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the parent of a 7th grader at BC, and I sit on the ISC Executive Committee and the BC HSA Board. But tonight I'm here just as a parent to check in on 2 important subjects that I fear have gotten lost in the shuffle of big issues like buses, enrollment growth, or budgets. One is exploring the later high school start time. The other is increasing physical activity at our elementary schools. If our school district mission statement is to be taken to heart, we as a community want, quote, all students to achieve their highest level of critical thinking and creativity, end quote. Conventional wisdom tells us that can happen if they are exhausted teenagers or antsy elementary school students. We have all seen the CDC, other medical research, and the ISC Sleep Committee report, so we know the problem of teenagers and sleep is real in our community and one that should be addressed. There seems to be an agreement that the next logical step is to form a committee to enable a larger conversation with parents, the school district, and the entire Lower Marion Township community. I would be curious to know why that has not yet taken place. We don't know whether changing school start times is right for our district and our kids, but we owe it to them to seriously explore the issue. My second issue is also health and wellness related, and another one that I feel the district has started a conversation on, but that doesn't seem to have much traction. Once again, medical research tells us that students need physical exercise to concentrate on new material and then retain that knowledge. And yet we haven't found a way to make that happen. I joined the Wellness Committee, back when it was still called SHAC, to explore opportunities for more movement and exercise at the elementary school level. I was told they were looking at a program called Take 10 that brought physical activity into the classroom. That program was rejected, but no alternative seems to ever have been found. That was 5 or 6 years ago, and our schools still face the myriad problems associated with asking these kids to sit still for too long. Go into an elementary school on a day when indoor recess is a necessity, and you will wonder, like I have, if any students or the teachers are having a positive learning experience. If we want focused, healthy children in our schools, we need to make progress on these important wellness issues and not let them get pushed to the side. I would ask that this board called for a township-wide committee to expand on the ISC Sleep Committee's research, and that the Wellness Committee be tasked with finding a means to get our youngest students up and moving more often during the day and for indoor recess. It is too late for my daughter to benefit from a healthier elementary school learning environment, and most probably from a change in the high school start time, if we get there. But it is not too late for our whole community to benefit from a school district that focuses on health and wellness improvements for its students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jenkins?
Ruth Jenkin, Winwood, Worcester Road. I always felt that there was no greater burden than a high potential, and always working, never good enough. Some of this, my main concern is not with the 4th grade or the 8th grade or the 11th grade. I've spent a lot of energy trying to encourage more of the kindergarten intervention and early childhood intervention so that we don't have to arrive at the 4th grade, the 8th grade, the 11th grade with deficits if we can intervene early. And I would like to see some kind of evaluation made in terms of growth at that level. And once again, I will bring up the kindergarten center rather than continuously building onto all of our schools forever and ever. With a kindergarten center, we can even consider a full-day kindergarten for all of our students, which is happening in many other communities nearby. The other question I wanted to know about was the cost of the bridge program. Is there a cost for these students? These are needy students and maybe students that can't afford anything, and additional tuition. And is the bridge being paid for by the school district? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start from the back and go up. I don't know the cost of the bridge program. I could find that out for you. I can tell you that we have looked at some increases in our kindergarten intervention. There's the extended day kindergarten program. Mr. Klein, the elementary principals, have just done a review of that. We hope to begin that program a month earlier and to really add some emphasis to that. We did look at the kindergarten center for full day kindergarten. It would require, if we were to use the facility near Welsh Valley, really building up. It would have to be a 3-story building, and there are some complications around a structure that size. So we do struggle with the concept of where do we go with early intervention. I'm a firm believer in early intervention. It's just how do we do it in a community where we're running out of space. In terms of the changing of the start times, we did say some weeks ago that is being actively discussed with the strategic plan. In addition to that, there are some practicalities that we're looking at. Mr. Ganan is about ready to make a recommendation on a consultant that we would hire to study the transportation implications, routing, and so forth. And so that is an active part. We also tried this year to have a change in start time for midterms and start those later. And the principals developed a plan for that. Frankly, the students rejected that. We thought that was a good opportunity to at least see what might happen with that. So it's still an active conversation, as is the recess. I'm not familiar with the Take 10 program. If you see me after the meeting, maybe you could tell me more about that. That's the first I've heard about it. So those issues are not being discussed.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Any additional comment? Okay. I was remiss at the beginning of the meeting not to wish everyone Happy New Year. So with that, though, we're adjourned.